Okay, Zoomers.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's another week. Hey Rob.
What
How you
up,
doing?
Mac?
This week we're actually gonna hop into something a little bit more off the cuff, right?
Yeah, we're just gonna take it fire from the hip. No, but we have been thinking about this stuff, and actually a lot of people have been thinking about this stuff.
What is this stuff?
We're gonna talk just about what you and I have been learning and walking through in relation to the issue of racial injustice and racial reconciliation, and just trying to model what it looks like for followers of Jesus to struggle with it and learn and grow. Neither of us would by any means say that we're anywhere even remotely close to experts or even that knowledgeable on the topic, but there's something to be said about learning and growing.
Yeah. So we're going to take our process of processing this whole thing and learning about it and share it with you in the hopes that maybe it helps you. Maybe some of our discoveries can impact you, have conversations start. And you want to hop in? Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Just in case we say the same thing, and then I'll have had the idea first.
True. Yeah, so that's another prerequisite. We haven't talked about this at all.
I don't know what he's going to say.
Yeah, so Rob,
all right.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, dude. So part of my personality type is just this really strong desire to do something. I see a problem or there's an issue and I'm like, okay, what do I do to fix it? And like many things in life, like being married or oh, Siri, sorry that I'm married. I don't know. Like many things, there's just not always something to do practically in that moment that's going to fix a problem right there, right? So I feel this need for real practical action, but also have to recognize that one, we don't have the power to change people's hearts. Mm-hmm. And there is way more of a need for listening and understanding than there even is sometimes for doing. And so, that has been a thing that I have struggled with deeply is okay, how do I help work towards the solution and find real practical things mixed with I can't change people's hearts and the heart of inequality that some people just operate from is the issue, is the most central part of the issue, right? And so trying to figure out how to blend those two. And one thing that I've tried to just understand practically is okay, what are the things that stand in the way of people of color getting a fair shake at everything that they're rights, what they're entitled to? You know what I mean? Every equal freedom and justice that a citizen of America should be given. What's standing in the way of that? And then how can I move towards assisting that? That's been a crazy challenge.
Yeah, so what are some of those things that you're finding that stick out to you the most? I know it's dude, just yesterday in our small group we were talking about one of our guys' friends, he has to think about whether or not he's wearing a hood walking into a store. And that's not on my radar.
Yeah, oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I think that thing of just we need to understand there's things that are not even on our radar that people are dealing with and living in, and man, it's crazy.
Yeah. I was learning the other day about the effects of the process of redlining when they used to redline certain housing districts, and how that even to this day still influences property taxes, which then funds schools in those areas, which then creates this inequality. Even though there are no segregated schools, there are absolutely schools in which the population and the effects of that redlining has meant that they don't have the same opportunities, the same funding, the same that kind of thing. I'm thinking okay, how can we work towards changing that? Because I want to champion change that is going to last into the future. Yeah, right, and make a real difference. I don't want it to be a fad that goes away in a couple of weeks. So learning about some of those things that are roots of the problems, and that was helpful for me. That was one thing.
Yeah, and so anything else that you're thinking, learning on this?
Yeah, or? the crux of it. So what I said about not being able to change hearts. It's true. We can't change or convince the world, like the parts of our country specifically where racism still exists in the hearts of people, where there is still like prejudice that maybe even not explicitly but implicitly says I have more value or more importance than another person. Man, we're gonna have a really hard time just convincing every person out of that. I don't think that's something that we are as humans are able to do. So I just was feeling at a loss. Like, well, then how are we going to fix this? If we can't change the hearts of people, then how are we going to fix this? And I realized, like, what the heck am I thinking? Yeah, we know the God who makes a business out of changing hearts, right? Like we serve a God who literally, like, that's what he does, is he changes the hearts of people and he gives us the Spirit. And there's this prophecy in Ezekiel in chapter 11. This chapter 11, verse 19, it says this, and I will give them, this is prophesying what's going to happen, like with the Messiah, and it's like so crazy, really, really cool prophecy. And I will give them one heart and put a new spirit within them, and I will take the heart of stone out of their flesh and give them a heart of flesh. I just think there's so many problems due to this heart of stone that like sinful, broken humanity has, right? Yeah. And but when we trust Jesus and when we place our trust and our faith in him, and he, like, the Spirit comes into us and actually changes us from the inside, gives us that heart of flesh instead of a heart of stone, then that's the business that we need to be a part of. Like, that's the only way that people's hearts are going to change. And so when I think, okay, I can't change a heart, but I know who can. And so I need to share the gospel and build the kingdom, like increase the number of people who are saved, who, like, my father has like struggled with racism for his whole life. And you can't excuse that from like the generation that he grew up in or anything like that. And I realized that I'm not going to convince that out of him, but I, like, sure as heck, am sharing the gospel with him. And I think that will be a result of him getting saved, is that going away.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see, like, how literally, like, there's so many things. I remember when, like, school shootings or, like, just, like, the movie theater at the Dark Knight, like, that shooting and stuff, like, people were confused and just absolutely, like, flattened by what's going on in this, like, injustice, this tragedy is going on and stuff. But, like, in the same sense, like, it's wrong, but, like, it's because of this broken heart that humanity has, and, like, how we don't treat each other as we ought to. And there's so much that we're missing the mark just because of our sin natures inside of us. And so in all reality, like, racism has been around. I was reading in the Word, and we were talking about this in small group last night, of, like, there's a point in Galatians, I can't remember the exact verse, but, like, Paul has to call Peter out for being, like, racist, for favoring Jewish believers over Gentile believers. And he's like all hanging, he's chill with the Gentiles until his Jewish friends come up, and then he's
like, ooh, better go hang out. Like, ooh, gotta go.
Yeah, and so, like, that's the apostle. Like, he wrote books in the Bible, and, like, he struggled with stuff like that and having prejudices. And so it's like, yeah, that definitely, that heart of stone issue, we need God to replace and revive, and he's promised to do so. So, like, yeah, I think that's such an important takeaway. And
absolutely.
I guess, do you have anything else to say? Or?
No, man, I want to hear what you got.
Do you?
That's it for me. I do.
Okay. Shoot, man, this whole situation, I think, is even more difficult for me to just figure out where my place is, because, like, I'm not on the right team color-wise, and, like, neither are you. So it's like, maybe that's just, like, my dichotomous. Whoa, that's a dichotomy I have in my brain. It's like, one or the other, like this versus this. But in all reality, like, there's a lot of stuff saying, like, oh, what is white privilege? Like, do I have white privilege? And it's like, I don't think anyone really wants to say, like, oh yeah, like, I'm super privileged, because that's, like, not something that, like, you really want to just be like.
Sure. It's hard to admit. It's hard to, like, recognize.
But something I've been, like, learning about and just, like, kind of researching and, like, hearing through podcasts and stuff is, like, there is a wealth gap between, like, just, there are way more rich white families than there are black families. And like all of those people who got rich and like off of plantation and slave stuff, like
Still influences the
Yeah.
displacement of wealth today.
and it's not like after slavery got abolished, all of their wealth went away.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like after slavery got abolished, a lot of black people were homeless.
Yeah.
And so like you see so many people are like trying to escape like this cyclical pattern of like poverty
Yeah.
that is like just hanging around. And because of that poverty, like you have police automatically will have to patrol more poor areas because
Yeah.
in areas like that, people are forced to do more desperate things.
Yeah. Regardless of race, all around the world, poverty breeds like crime and that kind of stuff because it's like out of necessity.
Yeah, it's
Right? Like
desperation.
there's things that you experience when you're in those situations that you can't experience anywhere else. And it's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And so, like, wrapping all this up, like, I have privilege as a white person that I've been born into, like, healthy education. Like, I've had opportunities that, like, thank God he's blessed me with that. But, like, I have privilege and I need to wrestle with that. And honestly, like, I think we all have privilege in some form, no matter our skin color or anything. Like, God has given us blessings, but some have way more than others.
Yeah.
And I think you need to like do your own homework. And like this is what I'm trying to do is like seeing where am I just so blessed with opportunities that I don't even realize I have. And like what is that privilege that I have? And realizing whenever you say like white privilege and you're talking about like black versus white or something like that, like the first thing that I see a lot of like people jump to, and like I think in my own heart, like I have some inclination to like jump to this place myself, is that if you want to have a discussion about white privilege, like you're kind of like sitting back in your chair and it's like, okay, well, like how much do you want? Like, and it's like, I don't really think that's the goal.
Yeah.
And I don't think as Christians, like that's the goal. Like when do you see in scripture, like people like in need coming to people who have blessing that God's blessed them with and saying, give me all you have? Like that's robbery. That's not generosity. That's not the stuff the Bible encourages. So the quip that I have for my like point that I've been learning is in times of this where we're like seeing all this injustice and we're seeing different opportunities and stuff, we as people who have privilege are not called to like lose our privilege, but instead to use our privilege. And so if I've been blessed by God to have like my ability to do stuff, like I am in the position where I can help influence and help and like lift up others. And I think like the verse that brought me to is Romans 12:10, and it says, love one another with brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor. And like Philippians 2:3, Philippians 2:3, it says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility
Consider others
as more significant than yourself.
Yep.
And so like when we read stuff like that in scripture, like, okay, I am to consider myself less important, less significant, and instead serve and care for the other. Like, I feel less on guard about the things that like, like.
Yeah, you can't take the posture of fear or being stuck or being attacked or anything like that when you take the frame of like, I'm going to always in every situation consider the needs of others before the needs of myself. And in that picture, there is no room for racism and there is no room for like injustice and inequality because you've said at any point, I'm going to consider the needs of others more than my own. And that's where we end it, right? Like that's what wraps up our whole existence. Yeah,
for real. And I think if we stop looking at like this whole thing as this tragedy that we can't do anything about, and instead look at it as a call to action to use everything that God has blessed us with, then we'll see the Spirit of God moving through his people and like solving stuff like this. Yeah. And so I think that's ultimately what like we're helpless without God. Yeah. And so we need to be like praying and like trusting, like kind of like what you were saying with your point, like it's him that changes the heart of stone. Yep. And so we need to depend fully on him to change the systemic, like, things that are just too big for us as humans. But in the moment, God has blessed us with privilege, with stuff that we can use.
Yeah,
help
we all have opportunities
brothers.
to make a difference one way or another.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I want to close us with a verse from Psalm 51:10 says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." And man, that's our prayer.
Yeah.
We want clean hearts, steadfast spirits. Don't give up.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. Get to it. Solve racism.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to edit that out. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Zoomers.
I've been on the way now. We've been on the stage in a playground. Not enough change on the way.